Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk. Myself, Elyse, and Ginette get together every week, and we discuss anything that's kind of going on spirit-wise in the world, personally, and just kind of connect all our experiences and bring them to all of you. So this week we are kind of talking about something that I think is really fun. But we haven't really discussed it much on Spirit Coffee Talk, but I know that the three of us have talked a lot about this and in different groups. ETs, aliens, other life forms other than on Earth, other than humans, and what that looks like, people's experiences with it, and how to kind of make maybe this week the paranormal normal. So welcome. So yeah, we've all had experiences with different, I would say, life forms outside, whether in kind of like spirit form or more tangible. But my experiences personally have just been kind of communicating with my guides or guides that have come through from different planets, I guess you could say. And I don't talk about this a whole lot, I would say, unless it's in a very small, significant group that have come to talk about this. But yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, I find this is becoming more and more common, actually, in different communications I've had too. It's becoming more commonplace. Kind of like mediumship, even 10 years ago, was really taboo, whereas now it's becoming more commonplace for people to have their own connection with spirit. So I find that really happening with aliens and ETs, and however we want to term it. One thing that I want to say that really helped me when I was years ago trying to bring this into my reality is just to think of the probability factor, that if you think of all the billions of galaxies that there are, within each of those galaxies, there are billions of planets. And to think that Earth, in our singular solar system, is the only inhabited planet out of all the billions of galaxies, the probability of that is actually very low. Right? So that the higher probability is that there are other planets that are inhabited with other kinds of beings. And so what's happening right now with the collective of humanity is we're moving out of a global consciousness into a galactic consciousness, where we're starting to connect in with the energetics of the galactic community. And so one of the ways that happens is through galactic communication. So connecting with extraterrestrials, connecting with ETs, aliens. But that doesn't always mean, and we will talk about this, but it doesn't always mean physical interactions or abductions or things like that. That does happen, and we will talk about that. But also, their connections can happen extra dimensionally or interdimensionally. And so what I mean by that is they may very well be embodied beings wherever they are. Let's start with Pleiadians. Say we're talking Pleiadians who are 444 light years away within our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. They don't need to necessarily physically get here through a wormhole or a portal or a jump gate, whatever your word is. They know how, because of their level of consciousness, to project a part of their consciousness interdimensionally to appear as an orb or a manifestation in a higher dimension to communicate with us. They don't have to actually move that way. So many of our communications right now too are actually from extraterrestrials, not just spirit or spirit guides. Many of them are actually acting as spirit guides also.
Lots.
Showing up in spirit form.
Yeah. To help with raising the consciousness of planet Earth right now. Because a lot of their because they're obviously working on a higher level consciousness than the third dimension, right? Obviously, for them to be able to communicate that way. But have worked in their own consciousness raise as well, right? So they know what Earth is going through in its consciousness and how we're shifting into this new Earth collective, into what is kind of rooted as the fifth dimensional frequency. And so I think that people are starting to see it more and more and more, because as a collective, our consciousness is raising. So it gives us the higher probability, I guess, or chance, or ability to communicate with ETs, because they're communicating on fifth, sixth, seventh dimensional frequencies as well. So it makes it actually easier for them to come in and communicate with us. More of a telepathy kind of way is how I, have experienced it, where you kind of just communicate with each other without actually speaking. They speak, but in a very, and they sound different when communicating, but it's more in an energetic form, right?
Like the words land in your brain.
Yeah.
Do you find that? That's how I find it. It's like they land in my brain. I'm like, yes.
But they have
They
a
arrive.
different frequency though. Like maybe the different frequency is what makes them sound different. But like when I get a message from our guidance from an Arcturian versus my like Pleiadian team, because I like so much of my interaction is with Pleiadians, because that's essentially where like I believe there's an aspect of my soul is from. And so I'll see the Pleiadians quite frequently in their way. But when I have an Arcturian coming and communicating with me, it's very, very different. Right. And although it's like just it lands in your brain, you get the download of what they're saying. It is almost like they sound different because of the different frequency. Right. They're a lot more, in my opinion, and my working with them is more like direct. They bring direct messages. They're more of like the security guard versus like, the avatar kind of thing. You know what I mean? That's my experience. They're more of the ones that mean business. They're bringing with information. They help things get done on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Ginette, do you want to talk about the Earth Alliance?
Yeah. So there is, there are many different beings working in a community, in essence, a federation, to help humanity move forward. So that's considered the Galactic Federation, which a lot of people have heard about, right? We hear different versions of that. Within the Galactic Federation, there is also the Earth Alliance, which is made up of the Sirians, the Pleiadians, and the Arcturians. And the Earth Alliance is really, really focused as a majority on the evolution of Earth specifically. And that's because Earth is such an integral player in the consciousness of not only humanity, but also the consciousness that Earth itself holds. Earth actually has almost like a hardware system within it. If I could compare it to that, it has like a hardware system that has these like key codes and frequencies to the ascension of the entire galactic community within this solar system, or not the solar system, the Milky Way galaxy. So Earth is like this really important hard drive that the Earth Alliance is really, their job is to protect it and humanity
such
as
an
well.
Intricate role in our whole galactic kind of workings.
Yeah. And so the Sirians within that pyramid of this Earth Alliance, the Sirians tend to kind of be at the top generally. Okay, it can change, but they kind of tend to be the ones that are overseeing a lot. So they're kind of like the command center, if you will. The Pleiadians are really like the teachers. They're the ones that are interacting in a way of teaching and guiding, per se. And the Arcturians are the ones that are really like boots on the ground, keeping an eye out, observing for what's really going on in the 3D density. And they can do that from a 4 or 5D perspective. So it's not like we're going to walk down the road and see an Arcturian 3D physical, or maybe you do.
Or you might.
But I know that I've seen them when I've been going for walks in the forest or stuff, but I will see them in 4D.
Yeah.
So I'll see them in a 4D physicality, but who I'm walking with won't see them. But they're very much boots on the ground. They're not just observing, from that kind of higher view. So that's a really general thing.
So when you communicate with them in the 4D, do they appear to you more physical that way than when you communicate with the Sirians?
Yeah, 4D physicality is what I call it. So like I can see them and they are embodied, whereas the Sirians, it's more higher projected consciousness and communication, where my astral body goes somewhere different and meets their astral body, and we connect. It's different.
Yeah.
How about you, Elyse? What are you getting these days?
Well, I'm finding it Well, so a couple things. One, there's been a few readings recently where a lot has come through, and I had the privilege of being taught this by a very kind Indigenous person, like probably 6 months ago, where they shared with me the belief that many of the Indigenous communities, or potentially all of the Indigenous communities across the globe, are descendants from Pleiadians, and that those that are not Indigenous, I mean, everybody's Indigenous to a degree in their own space, but the true like Indigenous cultural communities as we know them from thousands and thousands of years ago, those that are not a part of that are evolved from a different perspective. And I remember hearing that and thinking, wow, that's really interesting. And so we had a whole conversation about it. And then fast forward probably 6 months, and I was doing a reading for a woman, and what came through was that there was a Pleiadian that showed themselves, and then they like hopped forward and showed me an Indigenous person from, say, thousands of years ago in South America, and then hopped forward again and showed me a different Indigenous person, different embodiment completely, from, more recently, and this like delineation. And I was like, wait a second. So I did some Googling, because I always like to confirm what are they showing me here? Where's the connection? Because I wasn't quite putting it together. And I found all of these articles supporting that these Pleiadians have been embodied, and I'm sure other beings, but in this specific, person, she had been from Pleiadian, had been embodied in a multitude of different indigenous cultural experiences, like thousands and thousands of years ago. And that was really part of her experience in this life now as well, was connecting to, because in this embodiment, her lineages were from similar places. And so she was then connecting to both her 3D human lineage, like ancestors, grandparents, etc., from this life as she knew it, but also past lives, going all the way back to her experience, maybe her original experience as a Pleiadian. And so all to say, I'm seeing these things come up more and more in readings, and then I'm also seeing it out more in the world, which I really love. For instance, Netflix has their like unsolved mysteries theories, like your series from the one back in the day with like the very specific intro song, and the Netflix is doing a series now, and a number of them are on aliens. And there's one in specific where they're talking about how I think it was in like the 60s or 70s, they had 500 reports in one night of alien ships. And there was a man who was the local weather station man, using like the old school radar thing, tracking these ships for hours. He tracked them his entire overnight shift, and they hovered over Lake Michigan. And they later found out they hovered over the spot that was open, because it was wintertime. So it was the only part of Lake Michigan that hadn't frozen over. And they were pulling water up into their ships. And hundreds of people saw this happen and reported it in. And they had this whole show on it. And I was watching it with John, and I thought, like, this is so fascinating that it's becoming more and more supported and understood, and people's minds are opening more. And I think that it's like chicken or egg. We're talking about they're here to hear more, to help us evolve consciously. And the more we choose to open and evolve consciously, the more they will show, the more they will support. And it's kind of like this cyclical relationship that we're in.
Instead of the whole like fear it. Because I think in the past that was that was used so that people wouldn't want to learn and grow and evolve into that level of consciousness. It's like to fear, right?
Well,
I mean, this poor weatherman's career was ruined.
Yeah.
Because everybody thought he was cuckoo and like didn't believe what he was saying. And so he had to go find work elsewhere in like completely different state, because they all thought he had made it up, even though now, we know likely did not.
Well, the interesting thing with alien contact, extraterrestrial contact, is that it's been documented since the early 1940s, right? And these things are coming out now. And I mean, back in the 80s, they felt that, different administrations felt that one way to unite the world globally would be against a perceived galactic threat. So that was part of the handbook and part of the play. And the thing that we're finding is that majority of the extraterrestrial contact that's happening is in benefit to humanity, the desire to help
Oh,
humanity grow and evolve,
100%.
right?
That's all
And
my experiences is totally in
yeah,
this like light working, right?
and even some of them where there were abductions, people had fear, but when they went back into them in past life regressions, they were remembering different conversations with the different kinds of ETs where they were being reassured, we're not hurting you. We
Totally.
just wanted to check this, or we just wanted to assess this. Or one guy, for example, he was taken up, and the reason he was taken into the ship was because he got so close to the light frequency to check out what was happening. It actually injured his body. So they brought him up into the ship to fix it and then bring him back.
That's nice.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah. And it was communicated to him really clearly. And so there are some cases, just like with humans, where the interaction is negative, right? Some humans interact with you in a negative way. It doesn't mean all humans are bad. The same thing with ETs. The majority of them, like 95% of them out there, are working for the goodness of humanity growing. So the interactions are to open our mind. And oftentimes they will do it with humor. I know sometimes when I've connected with different ones in different ways, I've had some pop into the backseat of my car while I'm driving. And again, I see them 4D physically. So it's not like someone would drive by and be like, wow, there's an alien in her car. But they'll pop in the back seat and, sometimes just start humming this funniest song to get my attention, or tell me something hilarious in which I start laughing. Like, they know that humor is a beautiful way to disarm us from fear. And so they'll try and bring it in that way, or with love, or with healing, right? There's a lot of healing that's going on for people right now through these extraterrestrial connections because of their advanced technology and frequency that's helping us grow. So I think it's a really beautiful time in where we are in our consciousness, but we have to choose to kind of embrace these new realities without the fear energy, because the fear energy is totally the old program. It's just an old program to keep people stuck or limited.
Yeah. And like to keep people into a safe place so that the general majority can be in one belief system, because as soon as it could be extended into different belief systems and stuff like that, then it's harder. I hate to say it, it's harder to control the narrative then, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how much easier is it to control the narrative if everybody's kind of on the same page, right? And so like having open communication with ETs to help with the like consciousness, or the raising of consciousness on our global scale, no, that's probably not the common narrative. And so what way to control that is to invoke fear, right? I think fear is the easiest way to get a collective in a majority, in my opinion, right? Using fear.
Yeah.
So I think that we're moving out of that slowly but surely. I think that there's some people who will never move out of that, which is fine. But I think that more and more having people be able to communicate something like this and not feel absolutely crazy and feel like they're going to get, shunned from their social groups, or nobody's going to believe them, or they don't even tell their like significant other or something like that. But when you have a major experience like that, I remember once it happened to me overnight, and it was like this, it was going on all night. And it was this crazy experience about these little, almost like, they were almost like baby aliens. It was really cool. They came through like this mushroom thing. Anyway, they were about observing the concept of motherhood through the evolution of humans, through like what motherhood. And I was going through it, and I had my fourth baby. Anyway, it happened. It went on all night. It was fascinating. And then I remember the next day, I'm like, who can I ever tell about this? Like, who could I, so of course I called Ginette. You'll never believe it. And I told her everything. And then she's like, yeah, I can totally see that. That makes so much sense. And I think to myself, like, in what day could you ever just call up your friend and just be like, so I had this crazy all night alien experience while I was nursing my babies. Yeah, that makes so much sense. But it feels good to be able to talk about it. And I know that some people are going to be like, no, I don't believe that, but that's fine. They weren't there, right? They didn't have the experience I did. And so, but I just hope that, because I know more and more people are having it. More people are having these experiences than that are talking about it. That's for sure right now. So,
some beautiful background for that, for people that like the tangibility, like the like evidence-based, like show me stuff, and that's a fair thing, right? Like if you need more info, obviously, go find it. But here's some really good links or some insights to go check out. So one of them is Dr. Stephen Greer. And he's somebody who has been a big player in exposing government connections into ET stuff, as well as he created CE5 Contact. So CE contacts have different levels of contact, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? Different various ways of contact, whether you're taking on a ship, whether you see them embodied. CE5 contact is where you initiate contact. And so through his experiences, he's teaching people through meditative practices how to initiate the contact with a lot of success. And there's different people that have been doing this and testing his theories, from either celebrities or scientists and so on. But he created a film called The Disclosure Project, and you can see it on Netflix, Prime, and Gaia. And it has a ton of information that has been gathered from different military personnel, CIA, FBI, files, documents, and stuff of these connections with ETs and their intentions, all the way back to the Roswell crash that everyone's heard about, right, in Area 51, when the E-bins were discovered, which was one grouping of aliens that actually taught humanity a lot about stuff, like even about Teflon and Kevlar and all of that. So that's a good one to look at. So the Disclosure Project by Dr. Stephen Greer. But also if you go onto Gaia Network and you watch Cosmic Disclosure with Emery Smith. Emery Smith is somebody who worked in a lot of government programs too, as a medical practitioner who was basically doing autopsies on different beings of different kinds. And as he grew in his reach within that, he got bigger and bigger pieces of autopsy stuff, to the point where he was autopsying full beings. And on that show, they interview a lot of different people from different walks of life who have had different experiences, some of which who have gone through lie detector tests to prove their theories. That's really good information as well. And the last one I want to mention too is a show on History Channel called Ancient Aliens, where they talk about a lot of the origins of this stuff, like you were mentioning, Elyse, about, the star peoples that many indigenous communities talk about. And it's always been a part of their creation myths, or the Dogon people that talk about the creation myths of the beings that come from the stars, and the Aborigines in Australia, who are the longest living source of Pleiadian contact. Right? There's a lot of stuff out there, which is so cool.
I love it. I love it. I could watch that all day.
Well, it's really neat, and it can at least give people context. Because I want to say the reason why I think this is so important, it can give context because we are in a galactic quadrant of communication right now in our growth and ascension that my guides have been talking about for a long time. We're in this quadrant now where communication or contact in a very 3D way, or a news media way, or government acknowledging way, so that we can step up into the galactic community.
It's
not
starting
just the
to come
community.
forward. Yeah,
it's happening. Yeah.
Hey, have you ever heard the theory that that Lemurians and what's the other one? Why am I having a blank? Atlanteans were direct descendants from Pleiades?
Yeah.
That they were the
I've
first.
heard that a lot.
Yeah. So, and so I don't know, from my own experience being very, very deeply connected, and my experiences going like way back and into my soul's like origins, I always saw myself like coming from the Pleiades, but I was like, I was originally from Lemuria, and I connect so deeply into the Lemurian culture. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense, because that was my first like kind of incarnation on Earth. Like that was like, they were the first ones to come in and do it that way and it was like so much closer, because it's like they knew that they're from the Pleiades and they're giving this Earth thing a try. You know what I mean? And going then so disconnected to not having any of that contact for so long. But in some of these, I'll make it really brief, but in some of these programs that you were talking about, like that I would watch on Gaia, it's like Earth goes through the time periods to be able to come up into consciousness and be able to connect into the higher level consciousness, and then go down into more of the darker periods, and then up into the golden periods. So they go back and forth, right? And so when you go up into more of a golden age, that's when that fifth, sixth dimension frequency, you're back and forth with the star people, ancient Egypt. And, like, I think that there's a lot more answers to that than how did everybody do this when they think about perspective of our 3D existence now. It's like, well, Earth wasn't always like this. We've gone through different times. And I think that right now, because we're going up in consciousness, with the help of our star people,
galactic family,
our galactic family stepping in and helping raise our consciousness, because that's where they're coming from this higher level consciousness. So yeah,
absolutely,
it's not something to fear. If this is something that's like super outside your area of knowing, and this is all brand new stuff, that's totally cool. And if you're not interested at all, fair. But if you even have just like a slight curiosity, check it out. Check a couple of these programs out. Gaia especially has the best stuff. It's got so much great information on there. And I mean, if it resonates, great. And if it doesn't, leave it. But it's kind of something to just open your mind a little bit too, so that I think people can come out and share a little bit more and not feel like they're going to like lose their family because of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it's, it's okay. People can start coming out and sharing their experiences, because I think way more people have had them than actually admit it or say or talk about.
That's totally true. Like, if you actually start asking a few people, like, what's your thoughts on aliens? It's neat to see the percentage within your sphere or your reach that actually have either a story of a personal experience or someone they know.
Totally.
Right?
Guaranteed, in every social group, it'll either somebody there has or somebody that they know closely has. There'll be a story for sure.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Well, this is fun.
Any other thoughts on your end, Elyse?
Well, so I'll also note that Ancient Aliens is on Netflix in Canada anyways. So if you don't have a Gaia subscription, because you have to pay for that, many people have Netflix. So I believe it is on there as well. Another movie that I really loved, because I think a lot of our fear discourse around aliens comes from entertainment, just as a lot of our fear discourse around spirits and ghosts come from movies and TV and, things, because it's shown in a very scary way. Like, think of the movie Alien. Don't want to run into him. Not interested. So we have that ingrained in us. And one of the movies that I loved, and I watched it a number of times, and I actually, as we're talking about this, I think I'm going to watch it again, is the movie Arrival.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Because there's it demonstrates a fear narrative of these aliens and the way that they're communicating and why are they here and all these things. But I think it's Amy Adams is the main lady, and she's a linguist. She's called in to help. Oh, it's so good.
It's so good.
She's called in to communicate with them, because they're trying to communicate, but the people who are the military doesn't know how to work with them. And the things that she uncovers about herself and about consciousness and about the earth and our choices, like, I'll just leave it there, but it's such a beautiful movie, and one that I'm finished watching. And I've never had a particularly large fear of aliens, even pre-communicating with them. And it just really shifted my perspective even more on them, from outside of my brain and experience to, like, just a tangible. It's fiction. It's not real or based in anything as far as I know, but
that's what you think.
Aligned with, but that's what I was going to say, aligned with a lot of the understandings that I've had, and I know that a lot of others have, but done in just like a really poetic, beautiful way. So would recommend that as well.
And absolutely. I want to introduce everybody to my little Lyrian.
Oh,
Angel. This is my new baby kitten.
Cute.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, she's so fluffy.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart.
She's like, Mom, it's too bright.
You're waking me up.
Oh.
Yes. But thank you, ladies, for such a fun conversation this week. I really enjoyed this. This was a long time coming, I think. So very fun. And I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. And feel free to drop any stories or questions or anything in the comments. And we could strike up a really great conversation about this. So join us on the Facebook page, the Avalon Spirit Facebook page. if you want to have some more conversation about this. And yeah, very fun chat this week, ladies. Thanks so much. Okay.
See you
See you
later.
next week.